Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here on Sticks and Bones with your ghost host, Chelsea and Tenn. And we're back this week on video. But hi, Tenn, how are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited about the upcoming spring equinox.
Oh, yeah,
It's about to be everybody out there. It's about to be garden update season again. I'm
it
looking
is.
forward. I'm going to be trying my hand at planting all of the things again. I'm going to try again at the pumpkin. Mark my words, we will have pumpkins one season here on Sticks and Bones. But I
I
am
really
good.
wish that for you.
How are you doing, Chelsea?
I'm good. It's funny you mentioned garden because after we record, I'm actually going out on my balcony today because it is 60 degrees in Pennsylvania and I am taking apart my garden from last year. That's dead. So it's still
Oh,
sitting out
yeah.
there. So I'm planning to go do some work outside, which I'm so excited about. Like the warmer weather is here and I'm just like,
Yes.
I'm ready. It's supposed to rain the rest of this week. So I'm like, I got to get out there. And
Hmm.
I started doing some research on like what kind of things I want to plant.
Ooh, anything new?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try my hand at zucchinis again this year. For those of you that followed us last year,
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't have a second zucchini plant. I only had one, and you have to plant them together because they pollinate one another, or you have to like self-pollinate it. And I was like, why no zucchini? Oh, no pollination, and I don't get enough bees. So I'm doing zucchinis, tomatoes, I think, lettuce, just like easy
Ooh,
stuff.
lettuce.
Lettuce. I'm gonna
You know,
try
my
peppers.
my neighbors did lettuce last year and they had a great season with their lettuce.
Apparently,
So,
lettuce is very easy, like spinach, because you just chop it and it keeps growing. And then I'm planning to do a lot of herbs. I'm a big herb person. I do a lot of home cooking, so I'm very excited. And then I have some flowers on my list, just like little fun girly things.
oh my gosh, I saw online like you could get these little like, oh my God, they're like bee baths or something, but it only
Yes.
it only holds like an ounce of water and it's small enough where mosquitoes are not able to like lay their eggs and like form larvae and like you're not breeding West Nile on like your patio or
Ugh.
anything. And I was like, oh, maybe I should do that for the bees.
Yeah, we are becoming garden girls. Like if you would have talked to me 3 years ago, I would have been like a garden, everything that I touch dies. And you know what? It did. Last year, my garden didn't really do so great. I got a few things, but that's how you learn, apparently. The other garden girls out there that listen to us were like, listen, plant people kill the most plants. So like that's how you learn.
Yes. Hmm.
And hopefully, Ted and I were making a joke in the metaphysical store. I had the plague come to my house first with the beetles, and I warned Ten,
She did.
and
She
she
did.
said, I don't got no beetles. And then all her plants died.
Then she said, girl, the plagues of Egypt are already upon your house. Where
It hit
is your
me
blood
first.
upon your doorway?
It hit me first. So I'm prepared this season. And for those of you that are gardeners out there, we are on board now with the garden girls. So I'm excited. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited
Perfect.
to, after I work out and go up on the roof deck to like prune and garden and water and everything, to see all the little bees that are like the bumblebees that fall asleep while they're pollinating in like the squash or zucchini flowers. That is just the cutest thing. My heart, I'll start crying.
I know it is really cute. So yeah, that's a little like life update. So we'll give you in the beginning some quick updates about our plants. But another update we have going on, because the girls just have tons of updates.
The
So
girls.
first of all, shout out to you guys for selling us out of the mystery boxes for the first round. They are spring mystery boxes. That is a
Hmm.
celebration of Eleusis and the mysteries, which is based off of the mystery religion and cultic worship of Dionysus. Eleusis is based off of the cultic worship and the mystery religion of Persephone and Demeter, and her reuniting back to the mortal realm, if you will.
Hmm.
We are dropping another round of mystery boxes on Friday, March 8th at 12
Hmm.
p.m. Eastern time. So if you didn't get it this time around,
Yes.
this is the time. We are not going to be selling this collection to its fullest extent after the mystery boxes. And that goes for any mystery box collection because of how exclusive it is. And it is, based off of mystery cults. So
And the girls have been here a while, and you know that you have to be initiated into a mystery cult. So it is very much wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Bob's your uncle kind of vibes of the girls who get it, and the girls who don't, maybe next year.
yeah, absolutely. So we'll have a little bit left over for the general launch, but we're not doing a huge general launch anymore. We really believe that each of our products is a piece of art and it's spelled a certain way and created a certain way. So these are not mass produced. And if you want the candles, I highly suggest getting the mystery boxes because we're really going to have like less than 5 available for the general
Yeah.
collection. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we are a temple, we are a sacred space, we are a metaphysical store, and we just, the way things are made here have to be made with a certain energy of the season, and we can't do as much as, y'all probably had hoped for.
Yeah, unfortunately. But with that being said, there's going to be some other drops following March 8th. So
Yes.
please stay tuned for that. Don't forget to follow us not only on Sticks and Bones podcast on Instagram, but also Sticks and Bones store because that is where people are getting countdowns ready. That is where people are seeing exclusive sneak peeks on what is coming, what is dropping, all of that kind of stuff. So gird your loins because it is mystery cult season.
It is. So we just wanted to give a little shout out and thank you again for your support. And yeah, like Ten said, we have other things that are dropping that are not part of mystery boxes and are not part of the mystery box collection. They'll be for general, but they'll only be in the store for the spring season. So once it starts, the summer starts rolling around, they're gone. So
Mm-hmm.
like I've said before a million times, we work with the energy of what's going on, the changing of seasons,
Yeah.
the celebrations to the gods, depending on the season,
Oh,
and all that fun stuff. So that's a little housekeeping. But today, we really wanted to talk about on the podcast some, mythology based off of our favorite gals. We have Hera, Aphrodite, and Persephone. And this comes at a good time because, we are looking at myths and maybe, some things about the myth that people say, Hera is a jealous lover, or Persephone is meek, or
mm-hmm.
Aphrodite is just lustful and, just out here flirting with everybody. But as two women, as two girls have been through some things, we're looking at the myths through the lens of being a woman and maybe being like, but wait a minute.
I have some questions.
Yeah, is Hera actually jealous, or did Zeus just come out down here and cheat on her 5,000 times?
Exactly. No, and it comes at a great time because we've already really laid a great foundation in terms of going over female feminine archetypes that, have been created, such as the maiden, the queen, the enchantress, the sorceress, all of these different aspects. And we're really kind of looking at the aspect of the queen today because, fun fact for everybody out there, yes, Aphrodite is considered to be a queen. She is considered in many mythologies and by ancient writers to be the queen of Cyprus. So we are talking about 3 of the biggest queens. And, hopefully one day we'll return and talk about more queens of mythology and, kind of the shithole that they were put in.
I know it is really interesting to read mythology now being someone who's like in their 30s, and I always go back to mythology because you can relate to it almost at any stage of your life. And
Mm-hmm.
looking at the goddesses or the gods, and seeing yourself and the things that they've been through, maybe, not on such a dramatic scale.
Yes.
Um you know what I mean? Like when we get to Aphrodite and Adonis, like woof, or Hera and Hercules today, like okay, maybe I wouldn't have taken it there, but
Nobody's
um
kidnapping their wives today. No, we're meeting on
yes.
social apps.
No, exactly. And it's really interesting because you can always relate to a myth and see it in a different way. And I really do encourage those of you that even if you're not part of Greek religion, Greek mythology, you can always learn something. That's the whole point of it. We said that before, and you can see yourself in the gods. Like they are close to human beings in that sense. While they are gods, they make mistakes, they do things that we absolutely can relate to. And I think that's why we feel so close to them sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were first and foremost written by humans, and it was a way for them to explain their world around them. And I mean, Greek mythology, no matter who you are, everybody loves Greek mythology. Like Greek mythology is for the girls. That was my gateway drug for archaeology was the big old Greek myth books at like the scholastic book fairs growing up. It was that and the gold Egypt book.
Yeah, everybody. If
Everybody was flocking.
if it's not Greek mythology, it's Egyptian. It's like Egypt. I we've said this before. My hyperfixations in school were Mesopotamia, the silt and Egypt. And I love Greek myths as well. So they transcend time and there's a reason for that. I think it's because people can relate to them. So especially, being a woman, I love reading about the goddesses and just connecting with them because they've been through their fair share of stuff, you know?
Yeah, they absolutely have. And in one of my forthcoming publications, I actually ended on, something very similar, looking at warriors like hundreds of years before, Homer was writing about the heroes at Troy. And it's utterly fascinating that, over 2000 years later, we're still talking and telling their stories. Like
Yes.
these these lives of greatness, these stories of greatness that, maybe came from an oral tradition or passed along, through the Eastern Mediterranean. We're still talking about that today.
We are. We could still relate to the ancient people. So,
Mm-hmm.
remember, these myths were written in a certain time where women were, deemed a certain way. They were not seen, not heard, and just meant to run a house. So, the goddesses have very interesting stories. And today we're starting with Hera, right?
Yeah, I think we should kind of start with the
We're
queen
starting with
herself.
Hera. So, if you are unfamiliar with Hera, she is the queen of the gods. She is married to king of the gods, which is Zeus, and she has a very, very important role in Greek religion. We all know, like, we do honor Zeus and Hera as being like the king and queen of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because of that, she has a very interesting role. And I feel like, when you have that status and title placed upon you, you have to be a certain way. She is queen of the gods,
Yeah,
the
that crown
standard of being a queen.
that crown becomes a lot heavier.
Absolutely. And I never ever, like, when you ever look at any royal family, I never ever wanted to be a queen or a king or a princess because
Mm-mm.
they have to do the things that, like, us normal people just don't want to do.
No, and it's either they do what they're told to, or like Henry VIII is just like, you know what, I'm going to start my own church and I'm going to divorce you.
Yeah, but if a woman were to go to do that, it'd be like, oh no, sorry. Sorry, I can't do it. Um, So we are going to be talking about Queen Hera today, and one of her traits and attributes that people give to her, which in a negative
Mhm.
way, is that she is jealous.
Yes.
Now, if you're unfamiliar with Greek mythology or Greek mythology, Hera has a reason to be so vengeful and jealous because her husband was coming down here every which way, with all due respect to King Zeus, king of the gods, and consorting with mortal women and creating demigods and children that were not hers. They were illegitimate to
Yes.
their marriage. So, as a woman, and you can't get divorced, right? There's no divorce in this time period. There is, you stick it out. This is your husband. This is who you've married. You are queen of the gods. That is your title. You have power for it, but your husband is going to step out on you.
Yeah.
I don't think I would handle that too well.
Yeah.
And you're stuck
Immortally, like you're stuck in immortality.
immortally. And another thing is, like, your husband in this time period has the final say. So, like, while you are a queen, you don't get much say in the things that he does because he is the king, the masculine part. So no one's gonna look at Zeus and be like, no, no, not allowed.
No.
So I am taking the story today of Hera and Heracles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to recite to you the whole mythology. Listen, I am taking the baseline points of what she did. If you want to read the mythology, you can find it. I'm not reciting Greek mythology here. And this story, I absolutely, like, I cannot. It's like one
Oh
of the
yeah.
worst to me.
Oh
Um,
yes. And just going forward, Chelsea and I are each picking like a crazed myth concerning each of these women, and being like, can we see their point of view, in what they did?
yeah, can we see the point of view? And is Queen Hera actually vengeful, or was she just someone that was upset with her husband and had no way of showing it, you know?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So, like I said, I am paraphrasing Chelsea style. There is no Greek words in this. This is just me taking it and condensing it. Literally. This is going to be two seconds. Okay, so basically Hera and Heracles. So Zeus comes down to the mortal realm
As he
as he
does.
was known for consorting with mortal women. Okay, one time he came down as a golden shower. And I
Love
think
that.
that's why we have the term golden shower these days, I think.
He was
Okay,
into
but
some shit.
he is known for coming down and consorting with women, and that is just a fact of Greek myth. It's not even being disrespectful. He loves mortal, beautiful women. Okay,
Yeah.
so he has an affair with a mortal woman, and he conceives Heracles, who becomes a demigod. Okay,
Mhm.
Hera finds out about her husband's infidelity, and once again, he has created a demigod, another child that is not part of their marriage. Okay, and it is basically like a threat. You know, it's a threat to her power. It's a threat to who she is. When you think about royalty and like having bastard sons, you know, you don't want them to ascend into a throne or an area of power. It's like then their moms come along with them. So it's like I understand why that
Yeah, it's a threat to her own children.
absolutely like her legitimate children.
Hmm.
So she finds out about him and she obviously sought to get rid of him because she was outraged by her husband's infidelity. So, as we all know, we know the story of Heracles. He has to go through some trials. He's known for his strength, and he was destined to become a famous champion and demigod, right? That is what he is. I'm not going to go through all the things he does. Long story short, Hera, in her jealousy and madness, decides to inflict madness upon Heracles. And in his fit of rage, he kills his wife and two children.
Oh yeah. This was not shown in Disney's Hercules.
It was not. And you know, I when I look at this myth, you know, I'm not a goddess, but the pain that you have to be in that sort of instance to inflict something upon a woman and another two children, it just seems to me like someone who has been like burned so many times by their husband that they're acting out to like get his attention of like, can you stop? Because now I'm just gonna start doing crazy shit.
Yeah, and it's very much, unfortunately how the Game of Thrones was played in Greek mythology
Hmm.
between full gods, those who were divine children, would they reach full god status or would they
Right.
stay as demigod? And what would their children do? And do they have a right to the throne? And there's so many children of Zeus who could potentially vie for that title, that you almost kind of have to take a step back and also look at history and be like, okay, well, what have other royal families done? And pick any of them, it's not
Yes.
pretty, because
No.
everybody is playing the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, they had to fight for their own titles too, the Olympian children. So it's almost like it's a threat to their her, specifically her power. Like Zeus will always be fine and king of the gods, but what if he decided that he was going to consort with another goddess or human woman and make her queen of the gods? You know what I mean? It's like you have to do something to hold your power and title. And unfortunately for women in those positions, they're easily can be disposed of. You know, if they're done with you, you can be disposed of and the man will always be fine. I'm looking at royal families. I'm not looking at today's society. So
Correct.
once again, look at the time period these myths were written, but I do think it was a her protecting herself and showing her power and being like, okay, well, I'm queen of the gods, so I say no to this.
Yeah, kind of fighting in the only way that she can, because she can't directly go against her husband.
Absolutely. So if you've ever been cheated on, I know I have. It is the worst absolute feeling in the world. And there's nothing but like vengefulness that comes up because you're just like, I couldn't imagine going through it this many times and not being able
No.
to leave or not being able to do anything about it. Now, I'm not excusing the killing of a woman and two children. I think I'm no god, but
Mm-mm.
I think like, you know, taking this myth, I can see it and maybe how that transpired.
Yeah, absolutely. The feminine rage that fills you when
Mhm.
you, in a sense, are taking on the aspect of, somebody cheats on you and you're, you know, crumbling in on yourself and you have to deal with the fact of you weren't good enough. But
Yeah.
it's that aspect of it wasn't you, it was somebody else. But that was how she, in a sense, took control over everything in the way that she knew how. Like that was the only way that she could take power back and keep it. And really anything with the queens in this podcast, it really comes back to power. We've talked about this with the Persephone episode, but it really just comes back to power time and time again. Tale as old as time in
It
Greek
absolutely
mythology.
does. I mean, you can look at the marriages and yeah, maybe there is some love there, but it's mostly power for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And to continue on with the Hera train, toot toot, here we go. I am taking a little aspect, a little blurb, if you will, concerning her and the god Dionysus.
Shout out Dionysus.
And we've done his mystery cult episode, and there will be some more in the future, but this is just a quick little tidbit on him. And of course, as the story goes, the father of Dionysus is once again none other than Zeus. And in
Why
the
are we so surprised?
we're not, like, I think I'd be more surprised if it wasn't him.
Yeah, literally.
And in the Iliad, it tells us that Hera had, you know, lost her mind in this sense, and that Zeus actually came forward to her and said, yes, he had relations with a mortal woman. And with this being said, that's where the myths are going to kind of differ going forward. And the consensus is really that this mortal woman, Semele, was tricked by Hera to ask Zeus to show her the full might of his godliness. And what I mean by that is the gods, as they are being basically personified aspects of power, human mortals, we cannot view them that way because you would die. So
Right.
Hera tricks Emil into asking to see what his like pure form is, like his godly form
No,
is.
thanks. Not king of the gods. Have a great day.
And because he's like, yeah, okay, she actually, is consumed by his lightning and his glory when he shows it to her. So she is basically incinerated on the spot. And she's pregnant with Dionysus at this time. So, what of baby Dionysus? Well, Zeus rescues the unborn child and he actually sews him to his inner thigh to carry him to term, meaning Dionysus is in fact born twice in mythology. First of his mother, right before she passes, and then of his father. And this is really important to his mystery cult, right? It's all about rebirth. It's all about, catharsis and everything. So, highly recommend you recheck out that episode. So, he's saved, right? He's saved. He's born again, right? Happy ending? No, because nothing's really happy in Greek mythology.
Nope.
In a later instance, upon Hera learning where Zeus sent his son off to be raised in secret by Semele's family members, it is said that Hera made his aunt and uncle go mad to the point of offing their own children. And then, after he's saved from that instance, she then orchestrates for the Titans to rip him apart and begin cooking him for soup in a cauldron before either Demeter or Rhea, who is his grandmother, intervenes and sews him back together.
That is just, I have the chills running through my body because that's just like, who comes up with that?
It's it's fascinating that it's this madness because being cheated on or going through that almost like cycle of grief, you almost go mad yourself. So you're almost inflicting everything that you're going through onto somebody else because you can't be the only one who's suffering alone in this.
Right.
And the aspect of, having them tear him apart, is that a reflection of how she felt each and every time he came home, Zeus came home with another illegitimate child?
Oh, I'm absolutely sure because like cheating, remember how we talked about the darker sides of love? And we are going to talk about Aphrodite today. Um, it can make people do really, really dark things. I
Yeah.
mean, we see it all the time. Like people always talking about what it's like being cheated, or people like keying people's cars. I mean, there's that whole Carrie Underwood song where taking a bat to someone's car and bashing it in because it's just like, how could you? How could you do this to me in such a way? And it does bring up those feelings inside of you of not being good enough. It's like, why this person? The person could be someone that you don't even consider the same level as you,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just very interesting how that's transpiring in Greek myths because it is a way that most people feel when they're cheated on. They're just like, why me? What was wrong with me? Like you've torn me up on the inside. And the person that was cheating, doesn't feel that 100% pain like their partner feels.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy to see in multiple different, levels within this podcast with different goddesses, is that these kings can go about their duty and honor. All of these other gods have all of these other aspects, but the women who are consistently spurned, all they have is rage.
Absolutely. And I often think of the mortal women of like how it must feel to be tricked, to be deceived. If a god is coming down to you and like saying something, it's like, think about how they viewed their gods, right? It's like, did they even really have much of a say, or were they just honored to be chosen by Zeus? Like I think often think about the mortal women. who know he has a wife. Like, if that was me, I'd be terrified of Hera. Like, I would absolutely like do anything in my power to stay away because of her. Like, he has a wife.
He has a
So,
wife who is a goddess of marriage and a protector of women. And you don't you're simply just a mortal gal pal.
oh yeah, and when it comes down to it, we've seen a lot of these myths. Their husbands are going to side with their wives. So,
Absolutely. And when siding with one's wife, we move perfectly
oh, that was a
into
good segue. I set you up for a good segue. Okay, okay.
we are sliding into the underworld in a sense in talking about the age old myth of Persephone and Minth. And this one we've covered a little bit before, but for SparkNote version 10 style, Minth is a river nymph, and some of her tellings talk about that she is associated to the river of lamentation in the Greek underworld, which is the Cocytus River. And because she has these ties to the underworld, she, in different versions coming from different writers, once again, different myths, that she already was having this almost love tryst with King Hades, that she was this chosen nymph that was in a relationship, quote unquote, heavy air quotes around that word, with King Hades prior to Persephone being brought to the underworld and made his queen. So we don't really know if she was a mistress during the marriage or if she was a lover prior to Persephone becoming queen and becoming his wife. So it's kind of like a gray area there. But after Persephone becomes queen, it seems as though King Hades does not really return for Minth, that she is just kind of cast to the side and she's not used as a mistress, to second to his wife. He almost kind of just like, whoop, done. I only
Right.
have my wife now.
He has a goddess. Like, obviously a nymph compared to a goddess is like, you're gonna go and remember in this time period, they're marrying for power. Yeah, love can be there, but it's mostly a marriage of power. So who is more powerful in this instance? And also remember as well, we've talked about how King Hades doesn't have the ability for fertility. He's technically known as being infertile. Persephone, goddess of spring. It's almost like your other half of something that you don't have, that you want and you need because it's going to complete everything. So that's how I technically view it, of like, she was just a nymph. You didn't have a chance to begin with. Like, this is a whole ass goddess over here.
If he is death, she is life. They
Right.
fit each other.
100%. So like
And
she didn't have a
you're a,
chance.
you're a river nymph for an infernal underworld river. But I digress.
Yep.
So as the story goes, because she is kind of casted to the side, her jealousy and mainly her hubris, which is such a big thing in Greek mythology, begins to cause her own downfall by having her state that not only is she better than the ruling queen of the underworld, but that Hades will in fact come back to her and banish Persephone from his house,
Yeah,
from
sure.
his halls.
How'd
Like,
that work out for you, Mint?
like, and it's very much like, in a sense, did men think that, like, she was the one who deserved to be by his side? I don't know. We're never getting the female point of view. We're never getting the woman's point of view, when a man in power is concerned in the ancient day. But following this kind of outburst of her hubris, depending on the myth, sometimes it's Demeter who transforms her as well. But Persephone, for all intent and purpose in this podcast, was allowed to not only transform her, but she was allowed by both her right as a queen, her status. She was allowed to do this. And she was also allowed by her husband to do this. So her right and her husband gave her this blessing to transform this nymph into anything that she saw fit. And it was said that she trampled Minth under her foot because writers call the mint plant a weak plant.
So I have many thoughts. And I never really thought about this before, but like, when you look at relationships where like the man steps out or he has an affair and the woman's like, well, he's gonna choose me. I always wonder what the man is telling the other woman. We don't know, but like, maybe King Hades, I'm giving Mint a little bit of a chance here. What if he was saying something else to her and then was like, just kidding, actually, I'm gonna side with my wife. It's almost kind of like when you're getting involved in a married couple or you're trying to be a home wrecker and you don't know what the man or the woman, it could be the woman as well, is telling the other person,
Mhm.
we don't know. Maybe he said something to Minth. We don't know. This is mythology.
We don't know, and we will never know. But the fact was, she tried to usurp somebody's position, one of power, and she lost hard.
I mean, I don't know why, but then it makes me wonder, like, why, like, who would ever approach Persephone that way and be like, yeah, I'm going to surpass you?
Because so another note that I didn't put in here was that Minth was really making fun of the way Persephone looked. She was saying she was more beautiful than her, and she was more beautiful than the dark-eyed Persephone and everything. And it's like, oh, Jesus, like, good Lord.
All right, hear me out, because I'm gonna be like the devil's advocate for myth. And I know, like, this myth, we're always like, yeah, yeah, Persephone. And yes, I totally get it. But maybe she was feeling some type of way because she had been in a relationship with King Hades and he probably threw her to the wayside and said, oh, sorry. I want that because, men in this time period could do that. And, we've talked about, why do women even do magic? Why were women doing magic in love bindings in the Greco-Roman world? Well, this is why. This is literally a case as to why, because they wanted to make sure their man was standing by them, especially one with a title and power,
Mm-hmm.
especially a king. So I could see why she might have felt some type of way. And the first thing you're going to do is, if you are an unhealed person, is make fun of the other woman. You're going to blame the other woman, but it's never, ever King Hades' fault.
No, and it's interesting because Minth saw Persephone as a rival to what was her power, and therefore she went after Persephone's power.
Absolutely.
It, again, they are both vying for like the same throne, but they're never going after King Hades.
Right. We should all be looking at him and being like, well, what did you say to her that she's saying this? Or, did you promise her something under false pretenses? So I'm just throwing it out there as a woman of like, I understand we all don't like myth, but we don't really know because it's mythology of like, did he say something? As a woman, I can understand if you're thrown by the wayside and there's comes this beautiful goddess of like fertility and rebirth that he's marrying. And it's like, what happened to you? What happened to me?
Exactly.
What do I do now? Now I'm a plant.
But
Like,
to go after the queen and be like,
yeah,
nah,
right.
I'm better than you, and we're gonna banish you from this place. And it's like that's bold.
That's really bold. But I like to play devil's advocate sometimes in mythology because I like to look at it from all perspectives. Like, okay, well, what was going on with myths? Well, we'll never know.
Well, so it's really interesting because when I was, reading that, she would walk on mint as a mint plant because it's a weak plant and everything. I was like, hey, yo, like that to me is such like a crazy power move. And to take it out of mythology for just one hot second, um, King Tut actually in his burial chamber has sandals with his enemies painted on them. So anytime he wore them, he was stepping
I love that.
on his enemies. And it's like, that's literally what Persephone was doing. Anytime she saw a mint plant, just stepping on them because she turned out successful.
I actually might take that and use it in my own life. We're
That,
all
talk about
gonna
a baller
draw
move.
faces of our enemies on our shoes and walk. There's probably some magic in that, to be honest with you. Like the intent of that. I think we just figured something out. I hear it Styx and Bones. Shout out King Tut.
Shout out King
Like
Tut. Sorry you died at
Persephone.
19, but you know what? Shout out to you.
Shout out to you.
um, but another tidbit that it might put you back in the mint camp, Chelsea, is it was said that the mint plant grew near the site of Pylos, which is on the mainland of Greece. It's on the western side, and that she grew in this area, and that there was a temple to Hades here. And the mint plant became used to mask many times the smell of death in funerary rites. So she
Oof.
still could not escape Hades and Persephone after her punishment.
I mean, well, you don't challenge the queen of the underworld. Sorry, have a good day. I mean, I've never. I just couldn't imagine. And I, being a high priestess of King Hades, I should be a King Hades sympathizer in this instance. But I'm like, I don't know. What were you saying to Mint? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? Like, I like to look at it from all points of view. I don't want to just blame somebody. But I that's our favorite myth, and I know we've talked about it multiple times here on the podcast, and it's the most infamous one. But yeah,
Yes.
with myths, you can look at it from many different points of view, and you're only going to have one.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm a myth sympathizer today.
I think we're really seeing it to be a more female or woman sympathizer, because it's like I don't blame I don't inherently blame that Minth decided to try and usurp the only throne that was technically available. But, you fucked around and you found out. But also, you
Right.
shouldn't have gone after Persephone, a goddess. But at the same time, why are women going after one another when they should be
Looking at the man.
turning tides against the other?
That's what I'm saying. And that's why I'm like, I'm looking at this really closely and being like, but why didn't we address this to King Hades? But once again, the time period, right? Like it was written in a certain time period. I'm sure it was Persephone's chance to show her power because being royalty, if you're looking at it from a Game of Thrones point of view, if
Mhm.
someone is threatening your power and position, they have to die. Like that is there's no way of being queens that are sympathetic never make it. And that's just the truth of royals. You have to be stern and you have to be the one that goes straight for the jugular. So I get it. And that's why I get Queen Hera and that's why I get Persephone and that's why I get Aphrodite.
Absolutely. And I think it was Elizabeth the First, who was a daughter of Henry VIII, who said it's men who start wars, but it's women who finish them.
Absolutely. So, yeah, if you look at their titles too, I know we're really like unpacking this hardcore, but they are queens that have thrones and titles. And if you excuse one person, you have to excuse them all, or that one person will come back and harder and bite you. It's like you're showing your
Yeah,
Achilles, you know?
absolutely. And we also know what happened to Achilles.
Yeah, we'll talk about him one day here on the podcast, but woo.
Hey, yo. So the final one is probably one of the most, well, all three of these women are misunderstood, but this one, Aphrodite, is really boiled down to nothing but a flirt. Somebody almost like a Greek myth, like dare I say bimbo. Like that's
Yes.
all she's viewed as. And more often than not, we forget that, in many instances, she does have ties to warfare and the darker side of love. And people see the pinks and the reds and the whites. And oh my goodness, she came out. She was born of the ocean. What could an ocean girl do? She'll fuck you.
Absolutely. Aphrodite, I think, with all due respect, and I worship her. I love her, but she does terrify me. And I think it's because she is a goddess that knows what she wants and can get what she wants because of who she is. And she can have her choosing. You know what I mean? When we talk about like that, um, being so beautiful that you can have what you want, like pretty privilege, like that to me is Aphrodite, where it's like, you better come correct or don't come at all because she'll smack you upside the head. You know what I'm saying? Like she can do whatever she wants because she's Aphrodite. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, we still see in myths that she still sometimes doesn't have the choice. And I think that's what's even the most beautiful of them all, where it's like you can use it to your advantage, it still comes and bites you in the ass. So I'm going to be talking about the story of Adonis. Paraphrasing, by the way, paraphrasing. And we've talked about the Adonia festival and Adonis a little bit in our Aphrodite and the darker side of love magic episode. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
interested, we do talk about how you can celebrate the festival, the Adonia festival, and really honor him and Aphrodite and the grief, right? It is a period of grief.
Yeah.
That's one thing we really see with a lot of these goddesses is like these immense amount of like anger and grief, no matter who they are.
We're just seeing like where the kings personify power, we're seeing the queens personify feminine rage and
Yes.
grief.
Yes. So Aphrodite is most notable for falling in love actually with a mortal man who was born of incest. I had to add that there. A
Yeah,
mortal
he is.
man. So she could have had her choice of any of the gods
And she did.
and she did, but she fell in love with a mortal man, Adonis, and he was known for being like one of the most beautiful mortal men ever. Once again, I am paraphrasing. If you want to find the real myth and more information, that's on your own time. Okay. So one day Adonis was hunting and Aphrodite did warn him like that she didn't really want him to hunt. He can get really hurt. And he was like the most precious thing in the world to her. So obviously she's like trying to like keep him,
Corral him.
yeah, corral him, being like, listen, I know you want to do this, but like I
Maybe.
so he wanted to hunt a wild boar. And so he goes to actually kill the wild boar, pierce the boar. The boar does not die. The boar turns on him and kills him instead. And she loses Adonis right in front of her eyes. And I don't know why I'm getting choked up about this because the story just like always gets me. And I'm still paraphrasing it and I'm like, I want to tear. But we don't truly know who the boar is in mythology. But in this instance, I'm going to go with Ares.
Mm-hmm.
So Aphrodite, obviously, we all know she has ties to Ares. It is another lover of hers. And we believe in this myth that Ares was so jealous of Aphrodite's love with Adonis that he killed him, transformed into a boar, and he killed him cold-blooded in front of her. And she lost like the absolute love of her life and watched the life fade from his eyes. And I don't know what's worse than that. And in that moment, she declared the Adania festival where worshippers and followers of hers would actually follow in her footsteps of grief and venerate and honor Adonis in his memory. So while she's beautiful and she can have whatever she wants, her jealous lover came in and took that from her.
It's so heartbreaking. Like anytime you
Yeah.
talk about it, it's so sad. And when I worked in Cyprus, it was said that he was killed near where we dug, and that it was the temples there that, you know, witnessed everything. And it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
to know what they had together, and then, you know, one man's jealous rage, you know, turned into basically immortal lifetime suffering for another. Like her, in a sense, her beauty, in a sense, cost her a lover
Yeah, because she was being fought over.
because she was
So
taken as a possession.
absolutely. And she, like, while we think she had the choice, because she does, Aphrodite does make choices, but there are consequences to the choices that she does make because she, once again, is a goddess, and not some sort of king. Where we look at Zeus, who had many lovers, and we don't say anything about him, but when it comes to a woman goddess, not a woman goddess, when it comes to a goddess, it's like people are always quick to label her certain names or certain things. And I'm sure in that time period as well. But she to me is just like the empowerment for women. Like she really is like a force to be reckoned with, even in her own myths.
Oh, she absolutely is. And it really is so crazy to think that while she was viewed as a queen of an island, a queen of Cyprus, the king always had the final say.
Right. It didn't really count.
It didn't really count, even though she's a queen in her own right. Zeus also is a king. And when you look at certain things today, the queen is the most powerful chess piece. King does nothing. It's always the queen.
Right. So this is the aspect of the queen that we're talking about. And yeah, I feel like all women can really relate, or no matter who you are, how you identify, you really can relate to some of these stories. And that's why we always say darker side of love. Aphrodite is a goddess of love, but look at this. Look what her lover did. Killed Adonis right in front of her. And he was immortal, so he just died.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact is she chose to take lovers. She chose certain things. But while she was a queen in her own right and a goddess, some choices were made for her that she had no say in. And
Absolutely.
she, of course, has been boiled down to simply just flirtatious, but she is the goddess of love, lust, pleasure, and so much more. But because she is tied almost to sexual eroticism, she is only kept in that category and in that box. And while mythology paints a picture of her being able to have any man or any individual in the world, as we just saw with Adonis, it's not always the case. And in mythology, she technically at times was collateral or a prize to be won. And this can be seen especially when she is married for a period to Hephaestus. And Hephaestus, for the backstory, he was technically cast out of Mount Olympus due to some deformities that he was born with. And it was said that it was his mother, Hera, who threw him out because she could not imagine why she had a child who was born with a limp. So she cast him out of Mount Olympus. And he's rescued and he becomes a master craftsperson and a master smith. So he sends to his parents, he sends a cursed gold throne to Hera. to spite his mother, right? He's done with her.
Right.
And she sits on it and it binds her to the chair. So now she's stuck. And Zeus is basically pleading with his son to come back to Mount Olympus and to free his mother, to which he replies, I have no mother. Jesus.
Well, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that of like, yeah, no, she casted me out. So like, who's the mother? I grew up by myself.
And Zeus promises anything in some myths for his son to come home to release his mother. And in others, Zeus directly promises Aphrodite's hand in marriage to him, or promises the hand in marriage to Aphrodite to anybody who can bring Hephaestus back to Mount Olympus. And Dionysus, fun fact, does play a role in this. And ultimately, he does return and he marries Aphrodite, even though she is having love affairs with Ares, who's the god of war. But in the Iliad, Hephaestus, is presented as being divorced from Aphrodite. So in some cases, in her case, she was allowed divorce, but only after heartache and being labeled as like a seductress and everything because
like at what cost? At what?
At her affairs. Yeah, it's divorced with an asterisk of
right.
Here's what follows you forever. And in the Iliad, because he's divorced from her, Hephaestus marries one of the Graces. And there's also something of interest that I wanted to bring in for this discussion is that Harmonia is the goddess of harmony and is the offspring of Ares and Aphrodite together. So when her marriage comes to the Greek hero Cadmus, Hephaestus goes and gives her a beautifully crafted fine necklace. She puts it on and it becomes known as one of the cursed items in mythology. It is a cursed necklace that brings nothing but misfortune to the wearer and the owners, and many of whom in mythology, when you trace lineages, were queens and were princesses. And her daughter is Semele, who was the mother of Dionysus. And her Harmonia and Aphrodite's lineage through Harmonia would lead to the Greek myth of Oedipus.
It's crazy. It's all linked and it's so weird and it's so crazy. And these stories every single time are just like, you think it gets worse, and then you read another myth and you're like, oh,
there it is. Like,
there's Oedipus.
I couldn't imagine, she was able to get divorced, but at what cost? And has children with multiple lovers of hers. And then at her daughter's wedding becomes cursed. And now an ex-husband of yours is going after a child of yours.
Yeah, it's just a lot. And you're right, at what cost? Because those labels sometimes, like once people have what they think they know of you, those labels don't go away because they refuse to see past them. So I think in her case, people also were just mad at Aphrodite because of who she is. And I'm sure she probably gets a lot of crap from the other goddesses as well, of like she's able to do things. She was able to get divorced. Like they're stuck. Imagine how like, Queen Hera must feel about that. Like they're stuck. She's able to do this, but like she also has these labels against her. And you have to almost think about that. Like I always think about the other person, even if they're spewing hate, like why? There's always
Yeah.
a reason.
There's always a reason. There's always a cost. And no matter when you think you've like come out, she was able to get a divorce. So in a sense, she won. But what follows that? Did any of these goddesses actually win?
Yeah. Did you find peace?
Hera had power and being a queen. Did she win after, offing illegitimate children? Did she win? Did Persephone win after Minth? Did Aphrodite win after, leaving her husband?
Yeah. And how do you feel about all those actions that you've taken to get to those certain steps? That has to weigh heavily of like killing innocent children and women that were just kind of like in the way of the gods and their mythology. Does that feel good at the end of the day? I don't know. This is not in mythology, but these are questions I ask. It's like, does it feel good to do those things? Probably not.
No, it's literally like I don't know why. Like the Game of Thrones like theme music is just playing, and I'm afraid like the Reigns of Castamere is going to start playing. But like when I read about like Harmonia's wedding and like the cursed necklace and everything, having gone through like Semele and ending up with Oedipus, I'm like, cue the Reigns of Castamere, man. Like,
Yeah, we're good. Also, like going back to not to harp on Queen Hera, I just feel like she gets a lot of shit. Like she is also marked as a protector of women and marriage. So like it must hurt her to have to actually hurt other women because of her husband. Like there's no way that doesn't just not have like in my mind would not be something that like you think about.
Yeah,
I mean, we're adding our own personal little, little ideas on top of this, but yeah, that's just something I would think about.
constantly.
Yeah. So, it definitely this is how I like to view myths. I kind of like to look at it from everyone's point of view because you can learn something from all of it. But this definitely is the archetype of the queen. We have offered the queen candle in our store before, and it really is to honor this archetype. Maybe it'll make a comeback one day. But we really do love diving into archetypes and talking about how the gods or goddesses fit in this because people like to place other people in boxes, and it doesn't mean you should, fit into a box. We don't fit into boxes. There's many boxes we can fit into, but this is what happens with the queen, especially being in a marriage. And maybe you can relate. Maybe you have a mother-in-law that's like very spiteful and jealous, or a mother-in-law that's constantly in your business, and you're like, listen, enough, okay?
No,
Or maybe you just relate.
it's absolutely crazy. And to answer the questions, is Hera just a jealous wife? No. Is Persephone meek? Absolutely not. And is Aphrodite just a flirt? Couldn't be further from the truth. And
No,
I think that's the biggest thing with women is we're never going to learn what they thought in history.
I know. I remember I asked you that question the other day. I was like, Tenn, as an archaeologist, does it not bother you that when you are discovering things or learning about things or studying things that we don't have a woman's point of view in most cases?
Yeah, and when we do, like I'm thinking of like the collected works of Sappho, we have like this amount of her works in a book. And in the book, the book might look thick. It's because there's so many notes and there's so like such a big introduction. And one side is like the fragment that survives of her poetry, and the other side is analysis. Or I think of Anduhana, who was a priestess for Inanna and is like the first author in the world. The first known author was a woman,
Mhm.
fun fact. And she's praising this goddess, but we're never really understanding, how she's viewing her own life. How is she viewing being a princess with her father ruling at the time? And what pressure was put on her?
Right. Right.
It's
It is
crazy.
very interesting. It keeps me up at night. I'm like, I really wish we had like some more point of views from not even women, just like different people besides like the elite or people that were able to read and write. Like, what were people doing in rural areas? Like, I want to know because you shared something with me the other day that I think is just so funny. We were talking about how like different towns like in Italy, they have different aspects of La Madonna. So like if you go to one town in Italy, they'll be like, "Oh, this is how we worship La Madonna." And in this town, it's like, "This is how we worship La Madonna." And you told me there is one town that worships Apollo as Apollo the mouse catcher.
Yep.
And it makes sense because of sickness and illness, but
Plague.
plague. And it's just the way that it was worded of like, Apollo, we worship him as the god of the mouse catcher. Like,
Apollo the mouse catcher, we bring you good fortune. It's awfully different than, Apollo at Delphi, man.
right. And it's just so funny because it's like in their town, he's highly regarded for this. But I'm sure if you were like passing through or a visitor and you were coming from Delphi, you'd be like, this is mad disrespectful. Like, you are not sitting here calling Apollo, the god being the mouse catcher god. Like, you know what I mean? But in that town, that's what he was known for. So,
Absolutely.
I just think that that was like really funny. Me and Ten talk about these things on FaceTime all the time, and it's just you can't help but laugh of like, what were they thinking? I wish
They
we
were
could.
worried about the plague, and we're like, what spreads plague? Mice.
They were smart because it's the truth.
It's the truth. And then people forgot about it in the Black bubonic plague era. And, a third of Europe was like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it makes sense, but it's just like the way it was phrased. Apollo, the mouse catching god.
Apollo the mouse catcher. Here they.
Yes. Leave your offerings, travelers who come to visit our town.
Thank you so much. We hope you've enjoyed your stay.
Fun fact. But yeah, someone might consider that offensive. So
But with that being said, we hope that you all have enjoyed your stay here today on Sticks and Bones podcast. Don't forget, new lineup of mystery boxes, the mysteries elusive. Those are dropping on March 8th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So set your alarms, like set everything, send up a flare, like do whatever you need to, because when they are gone, they are gone. And unfortunately, we are not going to be bringing any of them back. And mark your calendars for when the full collection launches, because there's only going to be little things left, and get them before they are gone, because we are already full steam ahead for summer, for
Oh
Halloween, for
my
Yule.
God. We're so ready for summer. You guys, me and Tenn started planning the summer collection. I didn't mean to cut you off. I know you're doing your outro, but like the
We got
summer
it.
collection is coming before we know it. I'm not trying to rush us in the seasons, but that's why I'm like, people get mad that they're sold out. Set your alarms. March 8th, 12 p.m. Eastern time. It's not changing. Be there or be a square.
And not to mouse catch up. But please go ahead and follow Sticks and Bones podcast on Instagram, Sticks and Bones the store on Instagram. Follow Chelsea and myself on all of the fun things, as we're doing all of the cool and crazy things. And don't forget to join Patreon. Why should you join Patreon? Because Chelsea and I are taking a little break next week. I am so
We
sorry.
are.
Chelsea and I have to hit the books in the restricted section once again, because we are coming back with crazy shit to talk about once again. A little surprise for you all, because we have so many incredible projects that we are brewing right now. So stay tuned for that. Go ahead, listen to one of your favorite episodes, whether it's the Mystery Cult of Dionysus, whether it's the Eleusinian Mysteries episode, or whether it's Aphrodite and the darker side of love magic. So go ahead, listen to those, rewatch them on YouTube, watch Chelsea and I on your big YouTube screen, on your TV, subscribe, like, do everything that you need to do. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks. So grab your boxes and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.